We will officially call the City Council workshop for Tuesday, March 18th, 2025 at 5 p.m. to order. So Amber, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here tonight. We do have several members of the Parks Commission in attendance, so I want to give a huge shout out to them before we start because they have been here through all of this with me, helping to create the plan, cultivate the plan, and work through all the different scenarios. So big shout out to the Parks Commission, and thank you all for being here. Okay. Okay. All right, so tonight we have a pretty jam-packed agenda. We are gonna run through a list of several areas within the park system, and then we will cycle back through that list for city council discussion. So I'll go through everything, give a background on all the different topics, and then we'll go back through and dive into each category individually. So tonight we are looking for council discussion and direction on these items. Just a quick overview on the Park and Rec department. We have 2 full-time staff and we hire about 5 to 8 seasonal winter staff. So we do not hire any summer seasonal. Our winter staff is for the warming house and ice maintenance, and then the 2 full-time positions. I will say our jobs are distinctly different, and we're not quite interchangeable. Program-wise, we ran 16 different programs in 2024. Those programs are supported by over 12 organizations, 20 volunteers, and then a couple of them have paid instructors, and then I teach some of them as well. System-wide facilities we oversee, we have 4 different parks comprising of about 40 acres. So we oversee City Park, Pocket Park, Nisswa Lake Park, and Between the Lakes Park. And then trails are pretty new to us. We have 3.5 miles of paved trail and then 2 miles of crushed concrete trail, with the next half mile of the Gull Lake Trail to be constructed this summer. So all of those trails are within the last two years. So they're very new to the park system. And then the other facility we oversee is the Nisswa Community Center. And that is where we're going to start tonight. So the community center, what we're doing here tonight, our goal is to get direction on the scope of work for upcoming improvements to ensure the updates align with the desired direction in the community center. So the community center was not discussed much in the parks master plan. The location was about the only thing that was discussed, but not so much the operation or the direction uses of the community center. So taking the opportunity here and now to have a moment to discuss those things and kind of get some direction on how we see that going to make sure the improvements align with that direction. For 2024, the use of the community center, we had 140 classes and programs. Those are all through Nisswa Park and Rec. And then there was 97 nonprofit events there, 37 parties, and 10 weddings. The parties and the weddings are slightly elevated from previous years. So that's a good indicator that hopefully we're trending in an upward direction. But the primary use of the building is park and rec programs and nonprofit use. A quick snapshot of the budget. For 2025, our projected rent is about $17,000 with another $6,000 coming in donations. We transfer $25,000 from other funds, and that's primarily to help offset some of the capital reserve and the capital improvements that will be needed with the facility. And then the list that we're going to kind of focus on tonight, open to additions and subtractions, trying to find a way to draw the line somewhere. But coming with the capital improvement plan, areas that we're looking at updates to are the flooring, bathrooms, windows and shades, staining the exterior, and then a couple other coming down the pipeline could be the LED lights, and then the parking lot will be included on the 27 road bond. So there's certainly more things that could be done there, but based off of remaining life and then areas that could just use a little refresh. This is kind of the list that we've been working off of for upcoming improvements. The reason I'm bringing to you this to you now, we do start renting out and reserving the community center over a year in advance. So we're already renting 2026. Some of these improvements would impact the ability to rent it. And so just trying to get a scope of work in advance to be able to start scheduling rentals and the timeline of that. With this, we're looking at utilizing the capital reserve. Currently, it has a fund balance of 150,000, and that does come through the levy and the transfer from other funds.
Do you know what the cost roughly would be for the recommended improvement?
What we've been using on the capital improvement plan is approximately for this list about 80,000. Certainly would need to get more accurate pricing on that. So I'd say 75 to 90, 100, depending on the level involved.
Do you have any dates? Like, for instance, when was the last time the carpet was changed out there?
The carpet,
The laminate, stuff like that?
yep, the laminate flooring, so for lack of a better term, I'm just calling it laminate for the dance floor in the hallway. I was told that was done in 2013, and then the carpet was scheduled for this year. It's holding up, so we're pushing it out a little bit further. And so I think that would make for about a 12-year replacement cycle on the carpet. When it comes to the bathrooms, like the sinks and the mirrors, we're doing some minor repairs. The mirrors are kind of chipped around the corners, things like that. Getting a more accessible vanity within the women's bathroom are some of the things that we're looking at. And I don't have the date of the last stain, but that was with all park facilities. I don't know that one off the top of my head, but that was on an 8-year cycle. Okay, so that's the high level overview on the community center. We're gonna go on to City Park. Like I said, we're gonna run through all of this and then cycle back. City Park. So our goal tonight here, looking at direction on an interim plan for the existing infrastructure, as well as direction on funding sources and any related action items to implement the park improvement plan. So we are not looking at the elements of the plan tonight. We're looking at how to implement the plan. I'm gonna go on a deeper dive here, walk you down memory lane on City Park, and some of the things that have transpired over the last 4 years. So I actually started here in October of 2020. It was my first hockey season. We noticed some issues. The refrigeration was already inoperable at that time. And then noticing other things like with the lights, we began to look at repair costs. The lights to retrofit them were estimated at 35 to 50,000, and to get the refrigeration system operable again was close to $10,000. We then moved on to do a feasibility study to look at what the replacement cost would be. So we had the repair costs, looking at replacement costs. Based on the scope of work, it could have been anywhere from $1 million to replace what we had to $5.5 million, depending on what operation we wanted to move forward with. From there, we took a deeper look into the entire park, and that's when we began the park's master plan. So through that process, there's a lot of different steps highlighted here. So we began with a survey in 2022, which led to the development of 3 different concept designs. Those concept designs were brought to the community to see what people liked, what they didn't like. They were distinctly different in order to elicit feedback. From there, we took the best of all the plans and morphed them into a preferred design, and that's what was adopted February 2023 in the Parks Master Plan. We took that, made some graphic renderings, began working through our next steps. We had another council planning workshop in October of 23, and that's when we established the Nisswa Enrichment Fund. That fund was created to house all the donations for the park improvements and just general improvements for Nisswa. In May of 2024 is when we kind of initiated kind of the fundraising efforts. At that time, the direction from council was that park improvements were gonna be funded from donation. So that there's no money allocated towards improvements. The direction was to get donations. The Parks Commission worked to divide out the plan into 2 phases and identified a fundraising goal of $600,000 for phase 1, which included the playground and the pickleball. With that, City Council in August of 2024 approved us doing some site planning work to get a little further detail. And then in November, they completed the existing conditions survey as well as we did the RFP for the playground design. And so now here we are in March, we have reviewed an initial playground design and circling back to get more direction. Again, taking a deeper dive, this is all in the park's master plan. The community survey results, we had over 200 respondents. The amenities used most are the trails and the playgrounds. And the desired amenities were a swimming beach, a splash pad, and then pickleball courts. And then the top used amenity in the winter is informal skating and pickup hockey. So we really tried to incorporate those into the concept designs, knowing that that's where the community's desire was. So like I said, we had 3 concept designs, all distinctly different to elicit feedback. From there, we had a few different open houses. It was all available online. We compiled the feedback, looked at the budget, looked at the existing infrastructure, and kind of created this mid-level plan. From there, we ended up with the preferred concept that is in the master plan and divided it out into 2 phases. So like I said, the pickleball and the playground were phase 1. The cost estimate for that was about just shy of 1.2 million. Phase 2 included basically everything else on the southern side of the park. So that's the parking lot, the warming house, maintenance garage, the plaza area, and that's estimated at about 8.5 million. Currently, through the master planning process, they estimated we already have 7 million in existing infrastructure. So when we say 10 million, it sounds like a lot. We already have 7 million of that currently in the park. So we had that fundraising goal of 600,000 by February 1st, 2025. We did not reach that fundraising goal. So that's in part why we're circling back. We need to regroup and figure out some of our next steps here. With the master plan, we did do an infrastructure assessment. In your memo, I did highlight that the hockey rink and the playgrounds are nearing the end of their useful life. This infrastructure assessment looked at the existing conditions, whether it's replaced, repaired, new, things like that, if it's short-term, long-term, and then potential funding sources. So at that time, it was still the hockey rink and the playgrounds. That has not changed a year and a half later. Those are still the most immediate needs. To take a deeper dive into the hockey rink, there's a lot of elements within that to consider. So we have the lighting. I did go out this winter, took some measurements of what the lights were reading. They all measure low. It's our understanding that replacement bulbs are no longer available. And then again, in 2021, when I looked at retrofitting the lights, it was about 35 to 50,000 for the rinks. The chiller system or refrigeration system, whatever you want to call it, in 2021, the estimated cost to repair it was just shy of $10,000. I have recently also looked into what it would cost to remove the freon and the glycol within the system. That's a harder number to pinpoint because they just don't know the volume that's currently in there. And so they're estimating about 8 to 10,000 for the removal of that. So again, the chiller system has been inoperable since 2020. When we're looking at the concrete, we have been doing some patching. So there's a lot of areas that are breaking, concrete sloughing off, and we have actually gotten all the way down to tubing, which is where the freon and the glycol are. And then the Zamboni, I believe it's a 79, 1979, and we're putting in about $1,500 of repairs into it every year. So Zambonis can last a very long time. With its age, there's a lot of parts that aren't made for it anymore. So when I say the hockey rink, there's multiple areas. You pick one, it doesn't solve all the problems. So I just wanted to kind of highlight what we're experiencing with each different system within the hockey rink. And then to touch a little bit on the park financials, we have the capital reserve. That's for all of our park infrastructure and equipment that is funded through the levy, and it currently has a balance of $208,000. Park dedication funds, it's for the acquisition and development or improvement of parks and facilities. That has a fund balance of $96,000, and that is received through planning and zoning for developments. We have a Make Nice for the Ice Fund that is was earmarked for the outdoor rinks. It was received from private donations and has about 120,000 within that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the Nisswa Enrichment Fund, which was newly created in the fall of 2023 to kind of house the donations for this project, has a balance of 36,000. So that's the existing funds that could potentially be utilized. But yeah, looking for, again, further direction here. I'll cycle back to everything. I did run through some of this with the Parks Commission. Right now, we're kind of at a place where we need to keep the park safe. And we don't want to have a gap in amenities. We don't want to lose the amenities. If we don't want to pull it out and have it sit there vacant for years while we're trying to figure it out. So that's where the interim plan comes in, trying to figure that out. So trying to keep it safe and not lose amenities for the community. All right, still with me? Yeah, okay. Gull Lake Trail. This one's exciting. In your packet for tonight at the regular council meeting, you guys have a lot of information regarding the bids and everything for this summer. The bids came in very favorable for this project. So the potential is there to have remaining funds. And so tonight, I'm here asking you how we might want to use those extra funds, should we have them. Looking at the bid plus construction services and all of that, even with a contingency factored in, there's still a likelihood there's extra money. With the grant, it does have to align with the Gull Lake Trails master plan and that scope of work. And so when I reached out to Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails, these were some of the potential options. So far, in talking with Friends of Nisswa Lake Park and the Parks Commission, the most favorable one is to add a vault toilet, much like we did at Between the Lakes Park, as well as paving a trail down into the park to access the toilet. So kind of building it out a little more as a trailhead. I think there would still be potential if we wanted to address any ADA that are or drainage that are existing on the trail, as well as some trail amenities, kiosks, bike repair stations, things like that. I don't think there was much of an appetite for adding a parking lot. And then bike equipment or like equipment for bike programming, that would actually have a more long-term ongoing maintenance and staffing requirement. So definitely a good problem to have here. We'll cycle back through and just kind of discuss this further and how we might want to use those funds. Should we have them? Reason I'm asking now is if we need to do any additional plans, and timeline to order anything, bid anything. The grant expires June 30th of next year. So our window is short. And then last on our list for tonight is Pocket Park. For those that don't know what Pocket Park is, that is the area outside the tunnel by Big Axe and Ganley's there going under 371. And I did ask about that area being used for the grant funds, and it is not allowed. So they don't consider that applicable for the Gull Lake Trail. But tonight, just trying to get an update on scope of work, timeline, direction on this. Originally, October 15th, Tom and I presented a conditions report of Pocket Park to City Council. There was some interim solutions that were enacted, and then it was going to be a part of the downtown master plan, which has paused and shifted. And so I just want to take the opportunity tonight to revisit the topic and get any additional direction. Previously, we talked about the retaining wall and pavers, but that's again to talk about the scope of work and the timeline that council would like to see. So that's what I have. And we will cycle back through. I will go back up to the community center. Again, our goal here is looking for direction on the scope of work to ensure updates align with the desired direction of the community center. Since we haven't talked a lot about that, I need some lead time because of the rental and the rental component of it, and our thought process on the contracts for the rentals would be updated post renovation. We didn't want to update it. And so throwing it over to you guys for discussion.
One question I have, if you go back to that financial sheet for the community center. So do we charge a different amount for nonprofits versus like a wedding or an event?
Yes, currently nonprofits Monday through Thursday are no charge.
Okay,
If they, typically that's not when a wedding is. And then weekends, it's a 50% discount
for the nonprofits.
for the nonprofits.
Okay. And do we feel, because I'm assuming there's a seasonality as well, like when it's more booked versus when it's not,
Yeah,
from your lens, when the timeline would be to actually undergo all the repairs that are being brought forward?
yeah, it does fluctuate a little bit each year. These past couple of years, October, November have been very busy. So right now, like March is pretty open, April potentially. And then obviously the closer we get into summer, that's a lot more graduation parties and things like that. Right now, it's mostly birthday parties and, you know, Christmas party or something like that.
So then we'd be looking at 2026 for repairs?
Potentially spring of 2026 would be the earliest.
Okay. And then another question I have on that is, we've been there, so we know there does need to be some improvements made. Do we think that could help us boost our activity usage and maybe the, fees that come with it, like more weddings or maybe more events, because it then becomes a more attractive facility? Or are we still kind of hindered by staffing and limitations on that?
I'd say there's definitely limitations on what we are capable of handling. I do think some upgrades, especially cosmetic upgrades, would help justify a price increase in a lot of ways. I'll say because we are so flexible with the space and the way it runs, we're definitely not in competition with the Grandviews, the
Right.
Nature Links. Like that's not the group, the clientele that we're going for, but I do think there's room to increase rates. The Parks Commission discussed that as well. Just some different ways we could look at it, and I think the updates would help support that.
And Mark, you must have input, you know, because you're the liaison and are really entrenched in all the parks as well.
Well, I think it would be a good thing for the community center if, because we're getting back on track or on track with the rental of the community center. I think if we did the upgrades, which we have listed here, it would, in my opinion, it would increase the amount of activity there. I think that would be money well spent. And we can go from there. I mean, at that point, if it is, we can look at, the commission can look at the rates. If they want to move them up. That's about it.
I'll say
I
it's
think
definitely a
it's-
challenge to find a stopping point. And so this is my preliminary run at it. I think further investigation, if there is any required or necessary repairs for the function of the building. Otherwise, I think a lot of it is just cosmetic, like doors don't match and trims are different and
Well, I
things
would
of
put
that
I
nature.
would put the bathrooms a little bit more than just cosmetic,
We've had a couple of issues, but
right? The one question I have is like the shades, I'm sure you get the shades, you or Public Works can put them in. The staining of the building, is that done by Public Works?
my understanding is that it was outsourced last time because it was
Okay.
all park infrastructure.
All right.
So it was the garages, the warming house and the community center. So all those are coming due too.
Joe, do you have something?
Yeah, I guess several things on the building, you know, the staining and stuff done every 10 years. The siding is currently 20, we know how old, 20 some years? 20,
Yeah.
I think it's roughly around 23 years old, maybe.
Yep.
I guess at this point, in just passing the building, I would, before we go and say, yeah, let's get a painting contractor out to stain it with the age of it too. Go, okay, we're gonna run this out 3 more years and then switch it out to like a smart side or something that has a 30-40 year life
Mhm.
on it, because we're ending the life cycle of the siding that's on there anyhow. So rather than just dumping more into it, you know, painting it this year, next year, and then 3 years replacing it, do we just let it go 3 years, save that money and, you know, look at a bigger project? That would be specifically with that. Kind of same thing with the bathrooms, you know, just being in there, they do need to be remodeled, update. There's just some poor designs with it, you know, underneath the urinals in the men's room, there's like the furnace vent, stuff like that. It's just, you know, it's probably more of a remodel project than a facade project. So I think once we got into that, that would be a bigger scope of work, but maybe trying to combine these up. The carpet, you know, like you said, it's in fairly good condition. I'm not sure how often we have it, you know, professionally cleaned or bring over a cleaning machine, but that would be done. But as far as like even all the work that we're talking about doing it, I don't know how much more we can increase the value as far as cost in it, because we're not increasing the capacity size with the number of people can hold, anything like that, changing out any actual amenities with it. So I think, you know, I would say that we're just more repairing and upkeeping the building. The concrete out front is another thing, that in the next couple of years, because of the salt usage, I would say would probably be a high level repair, but maybe it'd be the sort of thing, much like we did this building, to plan a walk around with all of us. Maybe come up with a kind of a comprehensive plan, because like you said, I think it could be a bigger can of worms than maybe what we currently know, and just kind of, you know, that would be my intake.
Yeah, to touch on some of that, like windows are not on this list, if, you know, if that makes sense. Again, some of the bathroom stuff, there are things like with the design, ADA, things like that, that it could open up a bigger can. Concrete out front, whether that's with the road project, different project, this project, there's a lot,
Well, I
that
think-
could make it bigger, but yeah, Joe, one of the things I was thinking is, would it be worthy of, like the Gordian process that was done here, if that's a way that we want to investigate that and sharpen up, the pencil and the scope of work?
I would say that right now, I don't know that we need to spend upfront money to go to that far. I would say a walkthrough with us and Tom. You know, get Tom over there and kind of put this together. That way, we can start to get preliminary numbers and budgets and kind of look at the life cycle of some of this stuff. I think on the front end, we should do some work without paying an outside company to help us with that first, because we can at least get closer ballpark numbers,
Well, the other
you
thing,
know, with utilizing Tom, so.
the other thing too is the roof. I mean, are there any problems with the roof right now? And
I think that was repaired in the storm damage of 16.
right,
When that hail goes through, we'd have to ask Tom, but as I recall, they just, I remember them doing it in the last handful of years with storm damage stuff.
Yeah, it's
Is
a
that
metal
correct?
roof and it was, one of the corners was repaired. I don't know the whole
Right.
scope of work, but the northeast corner,
Right.
took a tree. So yeah, there's a lot of different things to look at there, and I do think it needs a more thorough investigation. This is kind of the list of notes that I have based off talking to different maintenance and different quotes I've seen over the years.
well, I think if we want to do a walkthrough with Tom and look at it and say, the sooner the better. I mean, let's not put
Right.
it off.
Let's do it in April.
Yeah, so the sooner the better, and then that way we can plan where it's like, no, let's just live with this for 2 years, because we're gonna figure out how to get money for it and
Mhm.
do a bigger project than just the facade.
Yeah. And to the point of the size of the building and the capacity is not increasing, I think a lot more of the rates would due to inflationary
Right,
than anything else.
But I don't, you know, like when we did the building walk around City Hall, I mean, how long did that take? Yeah, we did it and now we're getting it done. That took what? I can't remember when we did the first walkthrough. 23?
well, yeah, but that had to do more with, you know, the willingness of everyone to move ahead with this project.
Right.
I mean, this project sat here for 20 years, but we have a whole different council that's not gonna
Right.
let the buildings deteriorate for 20 years before we fix it. So I think that's the biggest difference right now.
Yeah, I would say, I think if we do agree to do the walk around in early April, or whatever time we do it, but it shouldn't delay much longer,
Right.
that we all have to be committed to driving forward a timeline and a plan.
Okay, so looking at a walkthrough, city council, have Tom, April, potentially May, but sooner the better.
I would say April,
I would
first part of
say
April,
April,
first week,
yeah.
hopefully. Just coordinate with Tom, see when you guys can come up with one, send it out.
I'll say, Tom is very helpful, but he also doesn't oversee the facility, so if there's specific information that we need to try to find, I'll work with him, but if there's other items that you guys have particular interest in, I can try and find last time it was touched.
So I know the one thing that you'd have to look at is the ADA compliance with the bathroom, especially with the height of the sinks.
Yeah, that could be a bigger project there.
Right. That's the only thing I can think of right now.
Okay,
Jesse or Bruce, do you have anything? Okay, Bruce? Okay. The city park next?
yep. Okay, city park. So the community center is within city park, though we did not talk about the community center as part of the master plan necessarily. So goals here, again, to remind everyone, we're looking at kind of an interim plan as well as how to fund the city park improvement. So I have a couple bits of supplementary information for you guys. Although you guys all have. Okay. So you guys, in your packet, you had a couple of different, kind of questions posed to you. Talking about the direction of the hockey rink specifically, needing an interim plan on that, and that would include the impacts to seasonal staff and recreation. So that's heavily tied to the budget scenarios that are coming up as well. And so looking at the rink and an interim solution, that's the first page on that document there. Just a proposed plan. Just something to work off of. You can give some feedback to it. Also looking at the consideration of the removal of the Freon and the glycol, and then subsequently the refrigeration equipment within the garage. So on that plan, it kind of has all the different elements that we talked about within the phases of the park improvement. Mostly it's keeping the operation the same. The goal was to not lose amenities. Okay, it keeps the playground, it keeps the existing pickleball courts, and it allows the opportunity to flood the rink. We would keep up on general minor maintenance, removal if necessary, especially with the playground equipment. And then when we get to the winter operation, if the money is there to staff the warming house and offer maintenance services, as well as how we would run programs. So right now we run youth hockey as well as adult hockey. The second page of that document shows the lighting measurements that I took. So to go through that one, just a little bit, there's on the hockey rink, each light has 3 arms on it with 5 bulbs in each. On the skating rink, there's 2 arms with 4 bulbs. So you can see which ones are fully lit, as well as which ones have some bulbs out. I went out there one night, did some reading, so there's a margin of error. It's me walking around with a light reading tool. For recreational hockey, my research is showing that you should have 20 to 30 foot candles. And on the hockey rink, we are measuring between 1 to 4. So it is underlit. And like I said, it's our understanding that bulbs are no longer available. And talking with maintenance, I think the best it was ever lit was at 10-foot candles. So,
Do both of the rinks use the same bulbs?
yes,
So in reality, we could take some of the bulbs out of the side rink for the time being and move them over to the hockey rink.
you could. There is one arm on the southwest corner that has never worked properly. Currently has no lights working on it. I know 2 of you have seen it at night and played there. Kids have played there. So it's definitely a challenge with the existing infrastructure to get that to where it needs to be. And so looking at this interim plan, you have an opportunity within the operation with warming house staff, and then how we schedule or not schedule hockey programs to deal with this. I think the rink can still be flooded. And the other items more tied to, the safety and how we want to deal with that and the budget for staff.
Well, I don't think we've used the cooling system in what, 5, 6 years, maybe more. My recommendation is to get the glycol out, get the chilling system out. I know that, Public Works, I think, said that they would be able to remove the equipment out of the garage and then, scrap it.
Yes.
Because if, talking to people in the industry, if there are leaks in the pipes, it's best to find them now because it's an environmental issue. So that's why I think the push was to, let's get the glycol freon out, get that out, have Public Works scrap the, system itself. That way we'd be able to use the rink, repair the concrete, patch it as needed. Because, I mean, that's what we've been doing for many years now, is just freezing it, not using the chiller system. I say get rid of that. Oh. And that you said that it was at the southwest corner of the hockey rink. Those 5 lights have never really worked right, correct?
Correct.
Has anybody ever looked at those?
Public Works could take you down the history of what they've done.
Okay.
Get lit pucks.
Well,
Neon pucks.
you do have some glow in the dark. But
Yeah, think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, we used to paint them. Pond hockey on the actual pond.
What was the cost associated roughly again to remove the
8 to 10,000.
8 to 10?
Yeah.
That all depends on how many gallons are actually in there, and they can't guesstimate. It wouldn't be known until they take it out.
I guess one thing that I might recommend, as an interim thing with the lights is maybe look at one of the portable light towers. A lot of times you see them alongside the road, MnDOT projects. They can set up a tower, light up a whole area.
Mhm.
That is probably, I don't know what one of those costs off the cuff, but that is probably something that can be utilized throughout the city for several different events, in case of an emergency, more of a public safety thing. Public Works could use, I know the fire department could surely utilize that at different points, but as an interim thing, so we're not spending the money on lights that we're going to take down, throw away or whatever, to spend some money on something that we can utilize throughout the city. On one of those light towers. Is everyone familiar with what I'm talking about? One of those mobile units?
Light plant,
Do you know what those cost, Jesse?
10 grand.
10 grand? Yeah.
10 to 15, depending what you
Right.
want.
So a couple of those, we'd still be way underneath the $50,000 budget. Plus we'd have a usable piece of equipment citywide to use. Because this is only used, when you actually count the number of days that it's used, it's pretty minimal. But that would be an asset versus throwing money away to the city to do the lights in the interim time.
Where would you get I mean, if we use it citywide, that should come out of the city funds and not just the park funds.
Yeah, I'm
But-
just saying,
right.
that.
But I agree with that. That would be
That
something to
seems
do.
like that would be a pretty practical option for some of the lights, meaning, hey, this one's out, that one's out, pretty functional.
Mhm.
Or, an interim thing.
Anybody else?
I mean, when we go play for Pickle Pond Hockey League, it's not really noticeable. I mean, I've never heard any of the guys or gals that come out there and play have any remarks to it. It's flooded enough when it's dark out, the light wise. It floods the rink enough where you're able to track a puck. It's not too big of a difficulty, so.
I guess if there's a certain standard or under that standard, is the city okay continuing with that operation? At least for organized programming.
Yeah, I mean, same thing when my boys play out there in the, you know, in the program that you put on or whatever. I've never heard the coaches or anything comment that it's too dark to see, you know?
If you want my opinion on the matter, I would say it's okay for the time being.
Right.
I don't want to trump a plan, but in the event that we are going to be doing a full-blown replacement of that rink,
Right.
saving any dollars.
Yeah,
to
so
help
in
get
terms
that
of the,
Right.
interim plan here, there is no comment on what to do with the lighting specifically. The goal would be to still run the operation. If there was an impact with the lighting, any safety concern there, which it appears that there's not a concern. And then also the budgetary standpoint of continuing the warming house operation. So like that's coming down next month. Just to warn you now that that's one area. If we're looking at a reduction, that could be one service that would potentially be lost. Which would affect our ability to light the rink and run programs as they've previously been run. So the goal here is not to get rid of the rink in the flooding operation this winter. We would still look to flood it. The proposal here is to remove the glycol and the freon and subsequently the refrigeration equipment and have more space in the garages. And that's what's on your list in front of you. So if you guys are good with the lights as is or looking into the temporary portable, that was another idea that I had. Can certainly get pricing on that and get back to you guys.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea to get pricing in case one goes. I think we would know, but, you know.
Does anyone else have feedback on the removal of the freon and glycol?
Take it out.
Yeah, it's something that needs to be removed, so I don't know.
So you would take it out in the fall? Or-
Potentially, that's, yeah. That's when I would say maintenance has a little more flexibility
Mhm.
to address it.
Yeah, I think-
How bad is the concrete on the rink itself?
There's a lot of patching.
Does it complicate the flooding process?
No, but on the north end is where a substantial amount is, right at the boards, and we do lose water, and as you know, the north end melts because of the sun. And then also it's not as good of concrete, so there's cracks and it seeps out quicker. So no, we can still flood it, that's not a problem, but between the cracks and the sun, it just goes faster.
But the approach on the concrete would do surface layer patching to make it,
Yeah, spot patching, so
Flush.
not even a full coat, just spot patching.
and you have to drain the freon and the glycol to be able to do that?
No. I'm just saying it's been inoperable and we don't know the condition of the tubing underneath. And so if there is a leak and which we don't know, if it's seeping into the ground, it'd be better to address it sooner than later if we're not gonna bring this refrigeration system back to life.
You want to bring this refrigeration system back to life?
That's not part of the plan.
You can't.
I don't, yeah, I think.
It was,
Well, in 2021, they estimated $10,000.
just to Band-Aid it.
I mean, if you would have taken it the last two seasons, right? Even the Pickle Pond Hockey League was cut short,
Mhm.
like.
Yeah,
early
this
summer,
year
both
was the
years.
first full season we had in 2 years.
So maybe a misunderstanding, to repair the refrigeration unit was a cost of 10 grand, or to remove the glycol and disband it was 10 grand.
Yes and yes, both are correct.
Right.
So to repair it in 2021 was estimated at about $10,000. I don't know what the cost is here in 2025. And then to remove the freon and the glycol would be about the same price.
We're gonna have to remove that freon and glycol anyway at some point, right?
Correct.
To do the park
To
and
do, yeah,
yes.
so,
Right.
To do what?
to initiate the park's improvement plan, would be removed.
There have been repairs to the chilling system over the years, so it's like 5,000 here, 8,000 there. And so it's like, do you want to continue down that path of throwing every couple of years in there? Also, if they do repair it, it's not guaranteed it will last
Yeah.
very long. And consulting with somebody that does this kind of work. They said with the cracking of the cement may not have affected the tubing. The chiller system hasn't worked that they would, if they're in that situation, drain the glycol. Because let's say you repair it, you keep the glycol in there and there is a leak. And then when we go to pull up the,
Everything.
Mhm.
bigger problem.
you can have issues. And their suggestion, or as they said, it's best to do it now so that if there is a small leak, it doesn't get to be a bigger leak. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, it makes sense, but still way back in, 21, a $10,000 repair is still a lot cheaper than 8.5 million.
Mhm.
So,
It's the process of repairing
right.
the refrigeration system. Is it not conduit underneath the concrete or encased within the concrete? So-
Yes.
I mean, that's serious work to do any sort of repair. How are you gonna
Right.
find it?
Yeah,
You're
you-
gonna find it.
Generally what they do
I
is
could.
right, you can't.
they pressure
Yeah.
test, and
Right.
see,
But that's my point. I mean, if we're talking here of,
so like if they pressure test it and it's not holding what it should, well, then they can figure out where it's leaking, the pressure
they
on
said
it.
that,
What's that?
they can figure out where a fluid's draining. That's what. this
They
company said.
they can have an approximate area of where it's leaking, where it's not holding pressure. It doesn't say that that's exactly where it is. So then you've got to rip up the concrete, which takes up the piping. Then you've got to repair their piping, and then you got to put in the concrete. That's if they're in the right area. Usually that's why they extend the area that they're going to dig out.
What was the last numbers that we got, including the contingency for a replacement rink?
It depended on the scope. They said to replace what we have was gonna be at $1 million.
$1 million to replace what we have, right?
Mhm. And then you start looking at what you need, because the skating rink boards are gone. So it kind of, if you're putting in the same location, a different location, if you can reuse any of the existing, a roof, a no roof. And so at that time, when we kind of put in our little mini wish list together, it was about 3.5 million.
And that was with like adding things like the roof.
Yep, and that,
okay.
and so the difference from that 3.5 million to what's in the park plan, the park plan includes that entire plaza area. It's a new warming house, it's a new bathroom facility, it's the maintenance garage, it's the tables, the bleachers, the scoreboard, it's the lights, it's the parking lot. And so, and then it's a lot of professional service fees, right? So that's why the difference of the 3.5 at what they projected at that time to the 8.5, because it's a lot more encompassing of supporting and surrounding infrastructure.
Essentially going back to then the Freon and the glycol side, we're gonna have to drain that
Anyway.
anyway.
Mhm.
So the suggestion is just do it now in the event that it is leaking,
Yes,
but it would never be repaired in its current state that it's in. With that current rink, I should say.
with the current rink, when the last I investigated, it was gonna be a $10,000 repair and no guarantee of how long it will run.
I mean, if we have to do it anyway, why not
Might
just
as well
do
do
it?
it, just do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing for the interim plan, we can run the operations pretty much as normal with flooding the rink, just keeping up on maintenance with the playground, keeping the pickleball courts as we have them. Look into portable lighting, find out what that costs, and then, go through a few more additional fact findings on the removal of the glycol and Freon, and we'll bring that back.
Mhm.
Okay.
Can we talk about the fundraising? real
Yes,
quick?
that's my
Okay.
second half of this part.
So, because you had mentioned, I was trying to write as we were talking, you had said a reserve fund has 208 roughly a park dedication fund has 96. Nice to the Ice has 120, and then the Nisswa Enrichment Fund, which that's the one where the goal was 600,000, correct? But it's at 36,000?
Correct.
Okay.
Where am I going?
And 20,000
Right.
of that is from the city.
Oh, okay. Okay, so because the city park is obviously the biggest expense,
Mhm.
right? And if the money's, so questions I had when you were talking, so that fund that the goal was 600,000, was that amount 600 set because we were considering like a grant or some matching funds or something? and we need To
Correct.
get there, to get that?
Yes, so that was, the goal was to raise 600,000 through the Nisswa Enrichment Fund. That 600,000 would have then been used as matching dollars for a DNR grant.
Oh, okay.
That grant was 350,000. And there's a couple other grants that we know exist. But in order to piece it all together to cover the full cost, we put the goal at 600,000.
So who's in charge of the Nisswa Enrichment Fund?
So Jenny's the,
It belongs to the city, so it's a city account essentially.
But
So
is there someone like actively,
Fundraising.
fundraising for it? Is there a
No.
board of directors for it? Are there people, like, is there a plan around it?
no, so when we look at what has been done, so the direction was to fund the improvements through donation. One of the greatest hurdles is that staff only has limited capabilities in terms of fundraising. So I think if we wanted a committee or a board or something of that nature, I think we should look at what's allowable. Just to get clarification on what my role is, what this other entity would do, and go from there. And yes, so this whole kind of first year was mostly just a little bit of education. Hopefully there's word of mouth, some organic grassroots efforts, but nothing really came to fruition from it.
Yeah, cause
So I think now we're looking at what's our next step, what's our plan, looking if there is a fundraising committee and what's allowable or not allowable. When we started this process, local option sales tax, which is a question here in your packet, that was one of the primary funding mechanisms. Usually parks have done very well to receive the funds from a sales tax. As you guys know, there's a moratorium currently expiring this year, and so there's different language coming forward with that. But that's a lengthy endeavor. It does go to public vote, which would likely be a 2026 election cycle. So those are kind of the two main topics that I put in your packet, whether if we want to pursue local option sales tax, that does go to a public vote. Everything did go forward, the public has the ultimate say on it. And then what would a fundraising plan, program, consultant, committee, if there's
Yeah.
desire for any of those.
I feel like the one, that I had shared with Mark, with you and Amber, and when we met is if we had a fundraising strategy, right, and put together like a brochure with like, here's the vision, here's what your money would go towards, get some folks involved, whether it's people from the commission or people in the community that have a passion for it or want to get involved. And we go out and start setting up meetings and trying to raise money, right? And see if that yields anything, but I feel like we have to set up that structure somehow first to try it. The local option sales tax, like I personally I'm against all taxes, but that aside, that won't go anywhere anyway until, like you said, November 26th. So that's almost 2 years away, unless we just want to be sitting here for the next 2 years. Would there not be an option to try to see if we can't get this fundraising committee off the ground and set, quarterly goals and just get out there and
I do think the two
Start
can happen
communicating.
simultaneously. Because if you were gonna go and pursue the sales tax, there's a lot of community education that you would want to do, right? It's for a public vote, we'd want to make sure that we're putting the information out there, that we have all the information that we need so people can vote educated. And so we wouldn't just wait 2 years and put it on a
Right.
ballot and check yes or no. there's a lot of work that would start now through currently, the last process included going through legislation. We don't know what this will be moving forward, but there'll be steps that we would need to take now in order to enact that path, as well as fundraising and a type of brochure, educational information, whatever you want to call it, put a package together. I think it would still be advised to find out what our particular roles are in it, and then if we need to outsource that somehow.
Yeah, no, so also, myself, I'm against the sales tax too. I don't want to go down that avenue myself, but what we have here is, and I brought this up before, that we need a marketing plan. So what we have here is we have a goal without any process put in place, any, like Jennifer said, funding mechanism, way to go about raising money and raising the type of money that we're looking at. We need a strategic plan, somebody to help us do this. There are professional people out there that just deal with fundraising. I know this, it's what my brother does on a much bigger level. And so what we've got to do, I wrote down the why and the what. Why did we miss the goal? And so that's the question, why out there? And we got to start asking the why questions. Why did we miss it? Well, we missed it because we didn't have staffing. Well, if we don't have staffing, why? What's the priority of the staffing? Why? And get down to then the what, the problem. So then we can actually build a goal where we can track it, set monthly things, put all sorts of different funding mechanisms in place. Because at the end of the day, we do live in Nisswa here. Our biggest asset are the people in the town. We are in a affluent community. Last time there was a big fundraiser done, I don't know if that board is still hanging over there. There's names and people on that board that equal over what we're doing. Simply, basic thing. A lot of those names still live in town. Hey, last time you gave to the park, phone call, would you consider giving to the park this time? I would say just very basic 101 grassroots fundraising efforts that need to be put in place because, I think that, I think that whole 8.5 million is completely doable in our town, in our area, with fundraising money, but we have to have the right plan in place, the right people. If we don't have the right staff here, we need to look into that. We need to talk about that, but that does exist out there. And this isn't an unreasonable goal to have. We just need to put the right stuff in place. And if that starts here at the council, having.
I think that
special
starts here
meeting-
tonight.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
Why didn't it happen? Why? Staff have limited availability to do these education outreaches. We have constraints on actual fundraising. The feedback we've heard from the community, we don't have a timeline. That's why a lot of people didn't donate, because there wasn't a timeline. So I think helping define some of these things and putting that plan together starts here tonight.
so what
And
are
what
some of
those
the
next
other
steps would
whys?
be to put that plan together that you're
Right,
talking about.
yeah. So that's the feedback I'm looking for, it's common out there, like, what are the 5 whys? Go down, the people, the timeline, what are some more of the other whys? We need to figure that out before we can put, a goal in place for a plan of action. Get down to the why, and when there's no whys, then what's our plan of action moving forward? And so we need to know all those answers. Timeline, okay, well, let's put a timeline on it.
I say
know.
starting to, timeline to start in spring of 2027.
Right, but I mean, we've got to tackle this. My first thing is, back to Jennifer, she asked who is the point person? Is that you, Jenny? Is that you, Amber? Who is?
For fundraising?
No, we still need a point person in the city that is gonna head it up and direct it and delegate and go, yep, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna interact with the council, not saying that you're in charge of the fundraising, but you're in charge of the process.
Mhm.
And we gotta define that process, define the people we need in place and go about it very systematic. I mean, doing this, there's a lot of resources out there for us to do it correctly. And so from, my question is, from us as the council and, you know, being involved in different things like this, you know, I'll ask what do you need as staff then to help put this in place from us? Guidance, do we need to have another meeting? Do we need to help find the resources for somebody like this that is an expert in the fundraising? You know,
I think
what
that's
is it that we can do to help?
exactly what you're saying. We need to create that plan. So what are the what are the avenues? Who are those, defining who those people are? I can help educate. We can have the Parks Commission to a certain level, but like,
If I could jump in on one component, thank you, Mayor Carnahan. I think one of the variables that we probably need clarity on from a legal perspective is the ability for staff and for other city representatives, elected officials, appointed officials, commissioners, et cetera, to participate in this effort. Because I do feel that there are legal constraints in that area. So while it may be great to say, we want to equip staff to do this, we may not legally be able to. So I think we need to know, because oftentimes what I've seen is, let's use Cross Lake for an example. They have a legally separate entity, the PAL Foundation. It was a grassroots, we're going to fundraise, we're going to create this. And there was a group of people who took that on. It wasn't a city staff thing, and they partner, absolutely. But I think we need to know and have clarity on what we can do, and then we can maybe fill the gaps
Sure.
on, okay, now do we hire a fundraiser, or how do we help to get that interest?
Right, and that's,
So,
most communities have that. They have,
Right.
you know, the entity out there, because usually you have to be a 501c under some of the state regulations. And I think that's where we need to give direction is.
Yeah, and so that's a great point, and it's information I don't know, but once again, who has city staff, is that something then you, Jenny, is gonna figure out with the legal counsel, or you, Amber, or once again, even though that we can't do it, just like those questions, it still falls on some staff to help get that figured out or to answer those questions, and so that would be establishing who's gonna be driving the bus for the city, even if it right away gets driven to that. And then still, even at that point, we still need to be involved to get this group going within the city, look at other direction, and through the whole process, we're still gonna need the person driving the bus here, and so that's what we need to
Why don't we,
clearly establish, and then timelines and put it together, even if we're not the fundraising entity, I guess.
can we do that at the same time we do the walk through the community center? Walk through this community, sit down and say, you know, get it set in place.
I don't know, I mean, even, Bill, you know, over at WSN, you guys have people that help with setting up a fundraising plan like this. The source will have some of this that we can go to look to, you know, what are our other resources within the city that we could ask some general questions first.
I mean, I've articulated this.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help too, because in my last job,
Mhm.
basically, I was 100% fundraising.
Sure.
I raised 6 million in 18 months, right? By putting together a whole plan. So I'm more than happy to help behind the scenes, get like the structure and some of that, so we don't have to go pay an outside
Sure.
consultant to do it. But I think, to Jenny's point, we need to find out first what is allowable by law for staff, elected officials, commissioners and whatnot. But I don't think we should wait on that. I think we should try to get an answer on that by the end of the week,
Right.
so that we can know what a forward path is. Cause then there could be follow-up communication, Jenny or Amber, from you to council of, hey, this is the feedback, and then we know how to proceed from there.
Is that
So
something
we're not
that,
waiting another month until the next council meeting, right?
is that something that Tom Pearson would have to look into, or is that something you can look into?
I would ask Tom Pearson to give us a memo on that, I think, so to help provide clarity on that. So Amber and I could reach out to him and get that ball rolling, and then bring back that information when he gets it to us. At least then we know some of the variables and then can keep kind of building upon that for what areas do we need to continue to explore.
So as far as the first timeline though, I would say that we'd want all this figured out by June 1st. So that this fundraising's in place when this town fills up with people to try and,
I'd say May 1st.
or May 1st, you know,
Yeah,
whatever.
I'd say May 1st
So,
too.
so it's in place to hit as many people as we can as this town fills up in whatever capacity that would be. So I'd say that would be the first timeline that we'd wanna, you know, work on getting this plan put in place.
And by get the plan put in place means council will determine if it's, we'll get the legal advice,
Yeah.
and then from there, it's a fundraising, it's a hire a consultant, it's a, you guys will figure out the next steps by May 1st, is what I'm hearing. After we get legal advice.
Yeah. I don't think we want to wait much
Right.
longer.
Once legal advice comes in, I think then we can sit down with Mayor Carnahan and we can hash it out.
Well, I think council needs to decide how you guys want to go about creating a fundraising campaign plan. If you're hiring a consultant, if we're creating it in-house,
Yeah, I don't think we.
if we need to figure out how to make a committee, I think council needs to collectively decide which avenues are then gonna be pursued based off of legal advice,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Get the legal
Right.
advice.
Advice first, yeah, just get the legal advice first.
And then we
that
can put all the options on the
Yeah.
table and figure
Mhm.
out how to next step appropriate ones.
Mhm.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what the difference of dollar amounts from the grants or matching grants versus the actual donation dollars that you're gonna be needing? Like if we all start to try to go out and fundraise money, do we need to go out and ask for $8.5 million from the community? Or do we need to go hit 4 or 5 million from the community? Because we got another 3.5 matching. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so far in grant funds,
Opportunities.
there's probably more out there that could be researched. Some of them are small. With grants, it gets hard to get all the different requirements and timelines to align. But I would say there's probably 500,000 in grant funds.
So we need to fundraise most of it, is what it
Yes.
sounds like.
Yes. Or local option sales tax.
Has there been any correspondence or reach out to the Minnesota Wild Community? Forgetting the last word. Group?
No. There's a lot of stakeholders out there. We have not actively gone to a lot of them. Because again, not knowing legally what we're allowed to do in terms of outreach, active fundraising. We've had conversations with groups. The Wild is not one of them.
And some of the wild grants aren't, they're kind of low.
But I think this goes back to, we need to know what we're
What we
legally
can't,
allowed
we
to
can't,
do
but
because
that's not off the table.
it's hard to say, oh, Amber, you should have met with this group or that group
No.
if we don't have the structure. Right, because the Lions reached out to me yesterday as well, and Jenny and I had met with them a month ago. They have capabilities to a lot of funds and they want to help Nisswa,
Yep.
but they need to sit down with us and understand what are the priorities, what are the dollar amounts, because they have access to funds outside. of
Yeah,
their
And a lot of the
chapter, right?
grants, we need to be further in the planning process than we are.
Yep,
Which we kind of stopped Woodseth from continuing on. We have an existing survey complete. But because we missed our fundraising goal for this last cycle of the DNR grant, we kind of put them on pause. Because some of the stuff, it expires. You gotta go back and re-get the
Yeah.
information on the environmental studies and things like that.
well, let's try to get Jenny an answer from Tom by the end of the week. So we know what parameters we have to be within and then go from there. Cause I think there is opportunity to build momentum around this and to set it up for success and then to get people in the community that want to actively be involved in the effort. But I think we need to know where our restrictions are.
Okay.
Does that sound good for everyone?
What was the timeline for construction? We broke ground tomorrow. How long?
We don't have any plans done. So we need to start there. I would say best case scenario, you'd be a 2027 construction.
What if we had the money in 3 to 6 months?
Start earlier. Again, we're at where we're at and all we have is existing conditions
Understood.
and a concept. So we gotta go through all the different studies. Get the specs, architectural, you name it, all has to be done.
Well, in my office about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I met with the chair of Minnesota Hockey Day, Brainerd.
Mm-hmm,
So coming here in 2027,
mm-hmm.
they're gonna need more rinks. This,
Mhm.
that's why I mentioned the last council meeting about what he knows that the Minnesota Wild Community Foundation or fund will do. Sounds pretty sizable, and they've done this for communities of our size. They're not going to larger, they're not going to a Minnetonka per se, right? I'd be happy to connect with you after this or in the coming days to be able to help run that to ground and contact Brad Piper and see even if we use, because that's a great advertised piece. If there's a game here, for example, a high school game to some extent, it gives some additional incentive for folks to say, we want to get behind that. It's like the businesses that are going to be sponsoring these 6-figure sponsorship packages for Minnesota Hockey Day coming here in 27.
Yeah, and I'll say with this level of investment, we definitely want to be thoughtful and methodical as we approach
Mhm.
trying to think through as many finer details as possible. Because it's so many elements in a very tight space.
Remind me though, didn't we have a couple renditions from HK?
We have the preferred concept design.
You got
It's
a
to
preferred,
scale.
but they gave us options, I believe, right?
Previously, which were not approved.
Correct.
Yes. And then Widseth took the existing conditions and they overlaid the parks plan. I do have a copy of that here if you'd like to see it after, so you can see how the proposed plan interacts with the existing. Because it's a domino.
Yes.
Big domino. Okay, I think we have the direction on this one unless anyone else has any comments.
Any comments?
Okay, Go Lake Trail. Like I said, tonight at the regular meeting, we have the approvals for awarding the bid, construction services, and then materials testing. All of those are eligible with the grant funds. I anticipate there will still be additional funds. So again, the possible list of options here, looking for avenues in which you guys would like to pursue so we can get on it early if there is additional plans that we need from Widseth and so on and so forth.
What would I do with the extra funds?
Yep.
Build me a vault toilet down there. The other thing too is I think if we go to put in I know the DNR right now, they use porta potties at the landing. So I was thinking that if we do toilets, the city park, maybe they would help.
Yes,
offset
the
that.
toilet and a paved trail to the toilet. We would have to work with the DNR as we have an access through their property to Nisswa Lake Park. And so it'd be in conjunction with them
Mhm.
to make sure that they're all on board.
I would say yes to the vault toilet, no to purchasing equipment. I think let people come up and use the bike places in town already for the equipment. I would say no to a parking lot because where would we do that? We'd have to buy land.
It could be added at Nisswa Lake Park, but again, that was not very
Yeah,
favorably received
No,
and there's a
so-
butternut tree.
Yeah,
yeah, so
To go
no to the
around.
parking lot. I don't think that's even a feasible option for, yeah, trail amenities, maybe some pull-offs, along the way, where there'd be a bench or something for people to sit down, rest, whatever. Wayfinding, sure. I do believe though that, you know, the number one, two, could be used to fix some of the drainage issues because, you know, those still definitely do exist throughout the trail, you know.
Mhm.
Even today, parts of the trail are underwater and I mean, until that gets fixed, we're just deteriorating the new project. So that would be my number one thing is let's fix the issues we already have from the first go around.
Yeah, you can speak. Yeah.
The grant would cover the installation of any of these items potentially. Obviously, there's more cost estimating that needs to be done in terms of engineering, things like that. And then ongoing expenses would not be covered by the grant. It would fall under the capital, or programming would just be under our operating.
Hmm.
Yeah, we do have existing right now for equipment to clean the trail. We do have a broom that can sweep it. We were looking at a blower that did not make the budget. We could still rent one. But that's, right now we just have a sweeper that can deal with some of the sand and the leaves. Yeah, it's a joint effort between Parks and Public Works to tackle that. Obviously, spring and fall have a bit more cleanup, but otherwise it's pretty minimal, maybe monthly.
Do you have a list of what the criteria is that we can and cannot use these funds for?
This is about the list.
Of what we can?
Yes.
And can
This
we
is what
only do
you,
one, or is it like you
Do we
can
know
do
how
all?
much money?
I would, well, anything over 175,000 would require a sealed bid.
No.
And so from the grant money that would
have?
remain,
Yeah.
even with a contingency, I'm betting there's probably 200,000 still there.
So would that wouldn't cover all of these? It would, is it like?
It
we
could,
Oh, it could.
potentially.
Well, you
I
have-
mean, my first recommendation was to then go back with what Seth, we'd look at the ADA and the drainage from the existing, per what Joe said. See what we could take care of there, what those cost estimates are. You know, trail amenities, if we're adding a wayfinding, or, you know, a kiosk, bike repair station, those are relatively minimal costs, $1,000 each.
Did the flashing, crossing signs ever get put down, like the cart path in Grandview and up at the intersection by Lower Roy and Hazelwood? You know, there were different areas identified for some other safety issues with flashing where we do cross the road in a couple spots. Did all that stuff, I know that it's not in on Lower Roy and Hazelwood, but that was talked about at that intersection. I would look at that. And
I
then
can see if that would qualify with the grant fund.
Right, and then I would look at that being lit down there, cause that's been a big concern with Grandview with all those golf carts and because it crosses right where the golf cart stuff, and that was a big issue when it was being built. So I would go back to kind of those original plans that maybe some of that safety stuff got caught and make sure that we have all that put back in. If we've got that much money available.
Yeah, I can see what's out. So regardless of what we choose, I still have to go back to the commission with an updated scope and it has to be reapproved.
But what is the equipment on what does the equipment line pertain to when it says purchase equipment for biking, for bike?
I could purchase like a bike fleet. Like,
Okay,
um,
perfect. So.
like a
does-
trailer of bikes, and I can do bike programming, or it's adaptive
Got it.
bikes. So people with mobility issues might have a different style of bike that they could check
Understood.
out, rent.
But my point on that is
Hmm.
they're paying for the project itself, which includes land acquisition, a lot of items within there. What about maintenance and upkeep? Are we-
No,
Nothing on
No.
that? So
It's-
what other gray, I mean, is there a gray area around purchase equipment for bike programming?
I could
What else
purchase
kind of
it.
falls in that category that we can try to explore?
The one thing
It's
that I
actual capital
minimally
asset.
thought is if we wanted like a pedestrian counter. I don't know if that would count, if that's even something we'd be interested in, but that would be one of the parts of the Gully Trail master plan is that we're getting quantitative data somehow.
What about more bike racking, for them people to actually.
I would
park
put
and
that under
position bikes?
amenities.
We do
Mhm.
have the covered one in the park there already, but
Yeah, trail amenities, I think would be, kiosks, benches, doggy stations, bike repair stations, it's benches, it's bike racks. But it has to be tied to the trail.
I would still be opposed to actual buying bike equipment because where do we store them? Who's maintaining them?
Completely agree.
They're gonna be left all over, you go to any of these cities with these paid bikes and it's just,
Lime scooters.
I agree.
Yeah, all
right,
over the
it-
place.
they're
They're
just,
thrown
it's
away.
just a mess. And so, I mean, we'd have public works hauling bikes all over every time they're left from here to, wherever. So I would say no for actual bikes, but air pumps, air filling stations along the way, the racking, anything else that accessorizes that.
Well, I will work with Seth on some of the ADA drainage items as well as, access a paved trail into Nisswa Lake Park. I'll reach out to the DNR, get some of that information back, and then, from there, I can bring it back to you guys and we'll have to get a revised scope approved by the commission over the summer. But knowing some of this could take some time and we need lead time on some of it.
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. Last one, Pocket Park. So like I said, we had a conditions report to you guys, in October. Public Works did some, immediate fixes to help us get through the winter. This was gonna be a part of the downtown master plan. Since that's been paused, we have not looked into this, so just kind of circling back here to, talk about what we want. For next steps, likely to just give staff the opportunity to go investigate further, bring back options, potentially price points on things. But being it was gonna be with the downtown plan and that's changing, wanted to bring it back to figure out how you guys want staff to work through Pocket Park.
So is this mostly the retaining wall issue or,
Um,
and the drain?
Again, it's kind of another one where do you want to stop and start it?
Right.
Obviously, what you're seeing, where you're seeing the issues is in the retaining wall and the pavers are shifting. Those are not the only things, the whole drainage there. It's taking on a lot of water from downtown.
Mhm.
There's ways that you could possibly deal with it from the road standpoint, adding a curb, like I said. You got a picture of a car parking there, which is one of the issues. I think kind of expediting the issues with that wall. So there's a couple of different ways that we talked about potentially tackling it. But again, looking for you guys for what kind of scope of work, a timeline. We don't have money set aside for this necessarily earmarked. We'd have to kind of try and figure out what that project is. We can investigate what those costs would be and also simultaneously figure out potential funding options.
So last fall, myself and Tom and Dave from WSN, we went out and looked at it, kind of evaluated it. So a couple immediate things, it's all, like you say, where you want to stop and start. The pavers and the water issue is being generated and created because there is no maintenance plan put in place and followed for the pervious pavers that are in there. So those pavers are actually designed to take and infiltrate that water. When it was built, there is from the upper level park down, it is about 15 feet deep of crushed rock in there that's supposed to take on all the water. It currently doesn't take on the water. It flows down the hill, through the tunnel, out right in Nisswa Lake. So step number one, if we want it to work the way it needs to work, at this point, those pavers would all need to be redone, pulled up, and then, you know, basically they're all infiltrated with the fines coming off the road and everything from no maintenance plan put in place. There's a company out of St. Cloud that we could contact that is kind of the expert in cleaning something like this. We could start with them. My personal opinion is we're probably past that point, but it would be step number one. If they could potentially clean them with the specialized equipment that they have, we could contact them. As far as replacing the boulder walls, there's really nothing to engineer ever with a boulder wall. But when this was designed, the landscape architect at the time wanted the small traditional look. The wall got built with smaller rock, pulling out the, I'll say the 10-inch to 18-inch bolt rock that they have there, and replacing more with a 2 to 3 foot boulder size, kind of doing a more uniform look is going to be more stable, hold together better and not safer. Kids walk along the top of these right now and roll them off, and that's what the issue is. People are walking along and roll them off. Use a bigger rock, bigger weight, you're not going to be able to roll and push them off and create that drainage issue. As far as a budget for the retaining walls, I would put $100,000 in there, and that would be a safe budget for the retaining walls to give you guys kind of a reference on something like that would and should cost for those walls. The pavers, that can be its own standalone thing with or without the walls. You know, some paver work is gonna have to be done in conjunction with the walls, cause you gotta pull it out in there. But it's not like you'd have to take up all the pavers or anything to do it. So it's just how far do we wanna go pulling out all those pavers? I don't know what the current square footage is, but take the current square footage and maybe multiply that by about $50 a square foot, and that would give us our ballpark number for something like that. So if that helps you guys with quick math, quick numbers on a project like that, that's gonna be in the realm of what something like that should be, and then it's really what we want to look, how far do we wanna take it? Do we wanna budget for it? Where the cars parked up there, there is a product in there called Scour Stop that's put in there to drain down through the ditch. Same thing over the years, the snowplow and the settlement. We could look at regrading and shaping that and reinstalling that Scour Stop product. You don't see it, it's designed to grow over the grass, but it is down in there going into the MnDOT ditch when that was installed. I don't know what else you want to do with the park, the grass and stuff up top, the plantings, all that stuff. It's never gonna grow super well there, because it is all filled with rock. That got filled with rock all the way to the top. There is a very minimal soil anywhere in the top of that park. If you dig down even a foot, you're gonna hit solid P rock. And so replacing some of the plants and stuff, that's probably a bigger issue, you know, look for more drought tolerant plants if you wanna dress it up with plants.
Does
So-
it, in your opinion, is there a better alternate than that boulder retaining wall?
No, boulders are gonna be the most effective type of retaining wall at this point, especially with the rock conditions behind there. You start getting into like an engineered block wall that requires geogrid, then you're gonna have to excavate back, take out the park benches, the upper thing, and so, you know, we're gonna get into a lot more expense using any other type of retaining wall product other than boulders at this point. So, because of the engineering aspects that would go into
I
it.
know we asked this in a previous council meeting, but who was the contractor that did this work for us?
It was Beach Construction that originally put that in. They're no longer in business. The actual individual that did this is in prison now.
Fascinating.
So that was through a MinDOT contract.
Okay.
So. Anything else you wanna know?
No, I appreciate all that. At this point, I'm just in favor of going to secure quotes through a Gordian process so we can just get this thing taken care of and put behind us. Initial assessment be funds coming from the general and reserve funds. I don't see any insurance liability, warranty. So just,
How much does it cost to go through the Gordian process, you know, with like, 'cause it's a pretty simple process. I mean, spec out the size of the boulders, the wall height and whatever. I
are we
mean,
obligated to go through the Gordian process for some?
Of this cost, I mean, you'd have to get 2 quotes at a minimum. So the question is, you'd need some way to have a consistent quote process. So we would potentially, one way would be to engage with Seth to say, let's establish our project parameters, then we can get quotes. Through the
They would
Gordian,
put the RFP together.
through the Gordian process, we don't have to go that step, and Woodseth works with a contractor who's already been vetted through that process. So for the City Hall project, we had High Tech, Norson, and Barato Brothers submit quotes. It's just as an example.
What's the cheaper route on the pre-construction side to get those quotes in?
What's easier on these projects that are less than 175,000 is that it's basically a quote. We don't have to go through that bidding process. So that means that a lot of the bonding and all that kind of stuff is minimal. So some of the things we don't have to do. So
yeah, I would just specify though, that like when this was originally put in, the contractor that actually installed it, they were a subcontractor of a subcontractor, I believe. And it got way down the chain and they're actually a masonry. To back up, these weren't even supposed to be boulder walls. This was all supposed to be masonry walls in the original plan and scope of this project. And it was supposed to be 3-tiered walls, and basically what the architect drew, on-site conditions couldn't get built. So.
I think from the staff perspective to what Joe's saying, this only lasted 10 years.
Right.
And so now we're looking at over $100,000 worth of fixes. Staff has minimal time to like keep up with the maintenance. So what level of investment do we want to put in now to get us where we want to be in the future?
We don't want to redo it every 10 years.
Correct. So what do we need to do in order to get that? What
Right.
can staff kind of run the maintenance on?
And to redo it, you know, we got tear out the plants and stuff at the top and once you open that wall up, it's kind of like quicksand, that P rock just all comes spilling out. So I don't know. It's fundamentally just a mess that we were handed in this project.
one of the things that we should make sure of is that, that vehicle that's parked there at the top of that, having that load right behind the wall there, that's the thing that's gonna force that wall, push it out laterally. So if we can keep the vehicles from parking there, maybe we have to do something along the edge of the road that we were thinking about doing in the downtown master plan parking. But maybe there's something we can do along the edge of the road to prevent vehicles from parking there. Curb and gutter, whatever.
You could simply take a couple of the large boulders and put right there, you know, that's a pretty good deterrent, just spec out a row of large boulders to set around there.
But
If they would ever need to be moved,
but if
drains could move them for something,
But if drainage is a problem with the curb and gutter, we could drain it one way, maybe drain it towards the MnDOT ditch or something like
that's the
that.
way it currently is drained. That whole area fills up, and where that front tire is, it runs down towards, like I say, that scour stop product is put in there
Yeah,
for the drainage,
okay.
So, but the bigger issue with the drainage actually isn't on the top. When you come down in these pictures, it doesn't show it's on the inside. As you're going down the trail on the inside left trail, because it's all flowing over the top of the pavers, it's undermining the boulder wall all the way down the left-hand side because it's not draining into the pavers like it should be. It's flowing over the top and the edge, and it's cutting out the side, just like on this. If you look close, you can see all the pavers tipped out on the right-hand side there too. you have to kind of go out there to see,
Yep.
but
I see it.
the real drainage issue that inside wall actually is gonna blow out sooner than later, maybe even than this one, because this one here is the bottom row is set in the concrete, because there's sections of concrete and pavers in there. And so where this water overflows, it hits the concrete. You know, and it doesn't undermine like where it's just the loose pavers and the rock.
Yeah, I mean, I think the drainage needs to be looked at throughout Pocket Park, maybe, you know, like when we're doing like a wall or something where a steep wall like that, we wanna control the water above the wall and control the water along the wall and make sure that it stays away. So, something we can look at.
If, I think Joe, you mentioned, Dave Reese
Dave
was out there
Dave, yeah.
this past fall, so perhaps maybe Amber, Tom, Bill and Dave could get together and look at a couple of options to bring back to the council in April to say this would be maybe the most realistic path based on this discussion, whether that's Gordian or a traditional, I'll say, quote method, and then you can review that, kind of now understanding maybe the scope of what you'd like to see done, if that's just a suggestion for moving forward.
Long-term maintenance wise, you know, if we're gonna look at that, you know, if Tom has feedback on it, it's gonna be the easiest for the city to maintain, to rip all those pavers out and just do concrete in there.
Mhm.
But now you're adding water to the bottom of the hill that wasn't anticipated. You'd have to deal
It's
with
been
that.
going there for 10 years anyhow.
Well, that's true.
This failed within a year of being put in, so
Hmm.
it's already happening. So, you know, if it's us to maintain and Public Works has to maintain it and stuff. Yeah, pavers are gonna look nicer, but man, I couldn't recommend putting that back in there for the maintenance aspect and just concreting the whole thing. Unless you got a better idea, Tom, but that's, I think, what we kind of talked out there that day with Dave too, is if this is our baby to take care of now and MinDOT's never gonna have a say on it, it's gonna be tens of thousands of dollars cheaper, if not six figures cheaper also.
I think Dave had mentioned that we could, or maybe it was you that mentioned we could put strips along there.
Right.
and Catch the water. Definitely would prefer to have concrete.
Concrete, right? Yeah, and part way down in it, you know, even if we put, what we had talked about is strip drains, you know, like what you'd see in a garage floor or grate into the concrete to catch that water so it don't flow down and then pipe it down. Because there is a pipe at the bottom that ends up on the other side. But that gets plugged, the fire department goes out there a lot of times and blows that out when that gets plugged. And so there is an exit already in there. So just for the council, if, you know, if it wouldn't be a bad idea to have them look at the concrete and bid it out, if the council's okay seeing the pavers go away and do it all out of concrete. Unless somebody has a real strong opinion on how they want it to look.
Well, you can include that as an option and decide at the end of the day,
Yeah,
based
that's
on an
fine.
estimate, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey. That's
Do-
all my topics. What else do you guys have?
Well, do you wanna do anything with the paint out there and the railings?
The railings, we were painted.
Okay.
So that project was done. We were gonna do, like an anti-graffiti, whatever was put on the rocks is all sloughing off on the vertical walls. But instead of putting money towards that, there's a greater need on the handrails to deal with the rust and the painting. So the handrails all got painted. The coating on the vertical rock walls are still sloughing off.
Anything else?
Well, the irrigation too, I think might need some work. If we're gonna continue with plants, especially down and
That would have to be part of this, cause it'd all be tore out in those areas.
I'd like to redo that if we can manage it. In my eyes, I'd like, if we're doing this, let's do it. Let's just make this thing what it should have been to begin with.
Right.
And
Mhm.
be done with it.
Yeah, makes sense. Does anyone else have anything for Amber? Oh, yes.
I really apologize. I was waiting for a public forum. I would have jumped in like the last six topics. If I could just say a couple of things, make it really
Come on up.
Okay, you can come
Can I
up.
jump back a little bit?
Come have a mic.
I'll make it really quick. Oh yes, Paul Satterland, 5638 Gander Court. Jumping really to the first topic, community center. The only, I guess, thought I had on that was, since we're going into almost like a potential full renovation of that building, do we look at it in a different lens and maybe repurpose a different use out of it? Is it a structure that Park and Rec department can grow into? Do we combine it with our master plan? Because we're looking at ADA accessible bathrooms, we're looking at a warming house, we're looking at multiple different buildings within this master plan. Can we combine it into the community center and look at repurposing that? Because looking at the numbers, that building it makes a little bit of money, but it doesn't necessarily make a ton of money to justify keep putting funds in. And so if we can find a really good alternative use for it and incorporate it into the master plan itself, because it already had a use. And so from the planning commission, we kind of pushed that to the side and looked at the other aspects of the park. But now that we know that we have to put a ton of money into that potentially, do we now look at it from a holistic standpoint, look at that building, how do we incorporate it into the master plan and potentially find a better use for it than what it currently serves? So that's my one thought on that. Going into kind of to mimic what you guys talked about with fundraising. On the planning commission, we had the same questions. What can we not do? Currently, we haven't gone out to talk to business owners. We haven't talked to certain stakeholders in the community, not sharing because we weren't sure if we were legally able to. But I think there are a lot of opportunities out there. So any guidance from you guys is going to be great as far as just being able to rally the community. But then I also would really highly encourage you guys to look at the sales tax in this community. We're a tourist community at heart. We have hundreds of thousands of people that come here. It doesn't affect the business owners. And I think we should allow some of these tourists to help pay for these parks. Because the city of Nisswa really has neglected to put sufficient funds into Central Park. And for the longest time, that was our only park. And now we're 30, 40 years later, and we continue to put Band-Aids on it. And so to be able to put adequate funds towards kind of our destination park and playground, and if we're going to have a destination hockey facility, all the ways that we can fundraise, I think, is really going to help this community, including a sales tax and allowing, people that come to this community from all over the United States to help pay for it. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Otherwise, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?